Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry Ray. We are still in this very upside down and confusing world where nothing makes sense and there's questions all around. And I'm not talking about reality, I'm talking about the world that Rika has found herself in here, where there's just way too many differences compared to the worlds that she's lived in for hundreds of years. And we're trying to find our way out of it. The problem is that Hanyu can't even find her way into it, or where we are specifically, so we need to find a fragment or something that allows her to properly enter. And once she does, Rika will have Hanyu by her side and therefore have that power that allows her to jump between worlds via death. So we just gotta keep on grinding through this lovely world here, try to figure out what exactly this fragment is, where we can find it. I don't think it's something necessarily physical or material. I think it's something that kind of has to come about through experiences or something. So we'll just have to keep on venturing through. I came around to a quiet electronic beep. I looked at my watch and noticed it was already evening. Being in here made me lose track of time. The other day I was out way past curfew and was scolded for a long time. The alarm on my watch was to prevent that. Letting my relationship with my parents grow any worse would make everything else more troublesome. I should call it quits for today. With practiced motions, I climbed the bundle of chains and headed through the exit of the roof. Now, it's not dark out. It's approaching dark. When I returned to the main house, surrounded by the cries of Higurashi that I'd grown completely tired of, there was a tightly packed case of beer near the front door, and 3 bottles of wine. The beer case was probably for a drinking party at the shrine's assembly hall or something. My father didn't drink beer because he liked it, so I knew it had to be for the assembly hall. They delivered it here before the party so he could chill it beforehand in the assembly hall refrigerator. And the wine probably belonged to my father. My father enjoys Western spirits and wine most of all. And wine at the same time was something I enjoyed as well. After my parents had died in 1981, I had gotten wine by bringing it from the main house, but my parents were alive in this world, so I couldn't do that. I stared at the bottles longingly as I tried to open the door, receiving the clack of its lock in response. I took a key from my pocket, unlocked the door, went in, and saw a note addressed to me right upon entering. It was from my mother. The note said an accident had suddenly occurred at the Kimiyoshi house, and they'd gone out to help with a memorial service. They'd be late coming back, and so on and so forth. Written as a postscript was a notice that the brewer would be bringing alcohol, and to take it inside the front door once I got back for them. I see. That must have been referring to all of this. If the person had come while I was here, I could have told them to put it inside, but I couldn't bear to see them outside like this, put there before I got back. And it would be a pain if my mother started rambling about me being inconsiderate later. I made a sour face, not caring who saw, and pulled the case of beer through the front door. Yeah, who would care, honestly, a child with alcohol? Next, I stood before the wine bottles and solidified my thoughts. Couldn't there have been a slip-up with the order? It was a brewery in a small village. If my father called to say he ordered 1 more bottle, they'd probably bring over another one without a second thought. So what would it matter if one of these disappeared? I always dilute it before drinking, so I'd be able to enjoy 1 bottle of wine for a pretty long time. Despite being in the entrance, I belatedly looked around, grabbed a bottle, ran into my room, and then pushed it into the winter futon in my closet that I wouldn't use for a while. Actually, my parents live here too, so I won't have many chances to drink. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, ice, a corkscrew, and a carton of orange juice, and then ran back into my room. Scandalous. I put the corkscrew on the wine bottle and was overwhelmed by the urge to wet my tongue with the nostalgic flavor as soon as I could. I'm not going to sit here and say that Rika's an alcoholic or anything like that. I get it, there's something to it, there's something to really gain from it, but couldn't you also argue that that's what an addiction is? You just have to get it, especially when times are tough or you just haven't had it in a while? How was I supposed to survive in this world without enjoying a good wine? And I'm not going to comment on the fact that, yes, Rika is a child and she shouldn't be drinking, but I'm a little late to be commenting on that because, well, we've seen her do it for a few chapters now. I poured some into the glass, and just listening to the orange juice splashing in to fill it up made my mouth water like a dog. If I dilute it this much, it'll look just like orange juice from the outside. But it was the nostalgic flavor that belonged to my world. At one time, this had been the flavor of my tears of defeat shed for the unbreakable June of 1983. But now even those tears of defeat felt sweet and tender. Those dead-end worlds were very painful, but I was still surrounded by my kind friends. I had the leeway to choose to surrender to Takano and continue lazily living in that infinite loop. But even that warmth was absent in this world. This made a week now since I had come here. With no prospects of returning to my previous world, I resolved myself to staying here for a long time, but a week in, it had already driven me to drink. I'll be fine, or it'll be fine. Those worlds had driven me to the same state. And I still managed, lazily doing my best as I soaked in wine, right? I needed to be released from this Rika Furude quickly. Nobody in this world would understand that, even if I explained it. That meant I had no allies here. If I told someone, they'd think I'd gone crazy. But considering this world's Rika Furude, that was only natural. This world's Rika Furude was a dour girl without a single friend. And one day she'd been hit by a ball in the schoolyard and started saying that she didn't belong in this world. If that big Dr. Yamamoto heard about this, he'd probably make a huge fuss about the impact having caused brain damage. But that would make the most sense to the people who live here. At the very least, until I arrived, Rika Furude was Rika Furude, the correct being for this world. Maybe it was more appropriate to say that one day I, someone different from this world's Rika, appeared and then took over Rika's body. Yeah, especially with the amount of differences, that is more plausible. Right. Am I not Rika Furude? Well, no. This world's Rika Furude was this world's Rika Furude, a different being than me. I had simply been interpreting her as being the same as me, even when I was in different worlds until now. When I thought about that, leaving aside whether I'd been living happily, well, I felt like I'd done something bad to this world's Rika Furude. Of course, it was too late to apologize now, and I couldn't give this body back to her anymore. If there was a way to apologize, it would be to acknowledge this world's Rika Furude as a being of her own. Because if I called myself Rika Furude, the girl who already existed would vanish from this life, which meant the only way to apologize was to not call myself Rika Furude. Well, that had been bothering me for a long time. I've long felt that my young self, pampered as the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama, and my old self who had awakened and traveled countless worlds had different personalities. But if I thought of them not as personalities, but as different beings entirely, right now I was no longer Rika Furude. Who am I? I stared vacantly at the wine bottle. Did I like this brand? My father always loved to drink this wine. As a result, I had borrowed it in countless worlds, and I loved to drink it even now. Right now, I couldn't even be lazy without borrowing the power of alcohol. Excuse me. And this wine comforted me just a little. At this point, I couldn't go on living without this wine. So in other words, I wasn't alive, but the wine was. Which meant I was not Rika Furude, and that I was the wine. Okay, we're really losing it now. I stared at the Western letters on the brand name written on the wine label, which I didn't know how to pronounce, and thought to myself that it was the name of me. My name is Rika Furude. No, not that, but this Bernkastel? I don't know what that means. Maybe I'll ask my father. Sounds a little familiar. Oh my fucking god. Yeah, it sounds very familiar all of a sudden, huh? How do you pronounce that? Frederica Bernkastel? Ah, whatever. What a silly name that is. Yeah, right? I agree. My thoughts began to slur and muddle. Good thing I don't ever have to prepare myself for how to properly pronounce that, right? Cheers to this shithole of a world. Yeehaw, right? And gamers rise up. No, it's very bad that she is going through this thought process here of wondering who she is and if she is who she's supposed to be and all that. It's a sign of, I would say, a form of insanity to a point.
どうしたの急に。母の日はとっくに過ぎてるわよ。
As I thanked my mother and patted her shoulders, I brushed her head. It was all a show, of course. If she had the same power inside her as Hanyu, then by touching her like this, I'd be able to sense it, even if it was feeble. If I did feel that power from my mother, could I kill her on the spot? I wouldn't hesitate to kill, but I couldn't say I wouldn't hesitate right here and now, because I would rather she not have the power inside her, and at the same time, I was uneasy about what to do next if she didn't. My mother laughed like it tickled, but contrary to what she thought, I was carefully checking if I needed to kill her. Oh yeah, that's right. So trying to find this fragment or whatever, I think Hanyu's hint in the last episode was that it might be within a person. I think it's more of like a emotional or feelings type of thing. And, well, the only way to dispel something that's inside of somebody is by killing them, I guess. And that has brought us to seeing if Rika has to kill her parents or some shit like that. My mother told me that was enough, smiling in a way that was not as dissatisfied as her words implied. Even after being so scrupulous about touching her, I couldn't feel any trace of the power. My mother wasn't the one who held the fragment, and I'd already felt my father's head. It wasn't him either. If it wasn't either of the two people closest to the legend of Oyashiro-sama, then it was improbable that the fragment was in a person. It was a happy thing, not having to kill anyone, but that meant one of my clues was now meaningless. That said, even though the possibility was unlikely, I'd still have to touch the heads of the other people in the village every chance I got, just to make sure. And at the same time, I had to continue my deciphering of the pile of documents in the ritual implement storehouse. Whichever I was supposed to choose, the labor of reading through that entire mountain or the sin of killing someone, well, I was going to need much more than a little time. And time isn't really on our side here. We have half a year until this village is going to get evacuated and therefore submerged in water? Time is really not of the essence. Well, I guess it is of the essence. I had lost track of how many mornings it had been since I drifted in this world. And this morning was frustratingly the same as the last world, the one I knew. They said that next Sunday was the Watanagashi festival. This was the first time I didn't care whatsoever about it. For Hinamizawa facing total eviction by next year, this would be their very last festival. They were apparently planning to put on a magnificent show to end things with. My normal world responsibility of performing a dedication dance as the last survivor of the Furude family did not exist in this world either. Still, I wasn't expected to simply go off and have fun. They would have me help with things that kids could help with, like giving out boiled rice and answering the phone. That sounds fun. I had gotten used to going to school alone too. When I went to school with Sodoko, it was always a lively morning with us running and falling everywhere. But that too was beginning to feel like a memory of the distant past. With several days already behind me, and my mind settled, I had stopped crying about small memories like that. Everything I did was for the sake of returning to my original world. I might curse the trouble it was taking, but I would never cry again. So even when I met Sodoko at the school gate and said good morning, only to be bluntly ignored like always, it didn't make me sad. The real Sodoko was an incomparable friend of mine. Even if a fake Sodoko ignored me, it wouldn't hurt me inside anymore. Mion wasn't outright cold like Sodoko was, but she didn't seem to think of me as any more than one of her many classmates. Reina seemed like she was actually trying to talk to me, but that was because I was isolated. She was acting out of a kind of pity, and it seemed sadder to accept that. So I had started reacting nastily to Reina's unwanted attention. After just a few exchanges like that, she realized I didn't want her doing this and stopped bothering me. Being all alone wasn't sad anymore. It was only natural I'd be alone as an outsider to this false world. In fact, the less annoying acquaintances I needed, the easier it was for me. That's right, easier. When I started feeling that way, then even if nobody talked to me during lunch, nobody invited me to eat with them, and nobody asked me to play after school, I was totally okay with it. With so few students in the classroom, if I took out a book not related to the class, Chie would confiscate it right away. I probably wouldn't be able to read the old documents while she was teaching. So all I could do was wrap them in covers I made from flipping over leaflets and folding them, and spend my free time at school pretending I was reading a regular book. We weren't allowed to bring comics to school, but the unspoken agreement was that you could read novels as long as you didn't do it during class, If I could just ignore the hustle and bustle, lunch break was the time I could focus the most. That's fair. Somewhere in those countless worlds, there was a time when I got bored with my daily life and read a lot of old documents. Thanks to that, I knew the gist of their contents. I just hope there is a clue somewhere in them about the fragment rejecting Hanyu from this world. It had been raining since midday. All of my classmates had stayed in the classroom for break, venting their pent-up energy indoors. Thanks to that, it was a bothersome, loud, and uncomfortable day for me. Oh, gamers, I think this is it. Okay, so I stumbled across a YouTube video a long while ago, let's say. And I think this is a very common YouTube video that people that I guess look up anything Higurashi on YouTube, therefore getting recommendations for other Higurashi related stuff would come across. So obviously me uploading it and then watching my own fucking videos to make sure that they look good, I'm going to get recommendations on Higurashi. I got a recommendation of a very specific scene. And I want to say, based on all of the context clues here, that this is a real scene. A scene adapted from a visual novel of Higurashi. I think we're about to get it. I'm fucking excited. At the same time as those words, my old document was taken from me. And there was Sotoko's face smiling evilly. Sotoko looked at the old document that she had stolen from me with disgust. Well, someone as ignorant as Sotoko had no way to understand it. I had learned how to read classical Japanese from my father, and even I had to go over each line several times to figure it out. Of course, for Sotoko, it wasn't about what it said. She seemed more amused at how unsanitary it looked, with dirty letters written on the dirty paper. But even if it was nothing more than a filthy book to her, to me it was something that could hold a clue. When I tried to snatch it back, she threw it to another friend, as though she had seen the attempt coming miles away. The girl who caught it threw it to another kid. And that kid, after his face scrunched up at the filth being given to him, grinned like an idiot and threw it to someone else. Several of my classmates threw it amongst themselves whenever I chased after it, teasing me. At some point, Mion had joined their circle, and it had turned into classroom-wide bullying. Today was not the first time this had happened. Actually, maybe before I came here, it was always like this. Even in a classroom with just 10 people, an order existed, and so did cliques. Belonging to none, and not wanting to, I was the weakling in the room, and thus, clearly the one it was okay to torment. Reina was the only one who said they should stop, but nobody listened to her. My classmates wanted to fool around, and they probably wanted to tell her that I was the only toy in the room, so why shouldn't they play with her during lunch break? But in the last few days, It had left heartwarming territory and moved into aggravating territory. This Sotoko clearly treated me with spite. When I thought about it now, the accident with the ball in the schoolyard that brought me into this world, she had obviously been aiming for Rika, who had been just standing there in the yard. But of course, was Sotoko always this oblivious to the pain of others? She had understood people's pain best because even though she said mean things, she had been through the worst of anyone. I see. In this world, Sotoko's parents were alive and the villagers didn't torment her. In other words, she hadn't been through the worst of anyone. Yeah, she didn't need the scolding and the proper raising that she deserved. No, I'm just kidding. No, definitely not. No, the shit that Sotoko went through was not right. But if this is the alternative, then fuck. What an awful character. Personality isn't wholly determined from birth. It's also something cultivated over many events and experiences, yes. With all her lucky dice rolls, this was how Sotoko's personality had turned out in this world. In other words, this Sotoko was only the same on the outside, but a completely different person from my best friend on the inside. Once I understood that, the sadness of Sotoko tormenting me disappeared, and in its place, she began to look like a horrible brat just getting in the way of my haste to return to my original world. Don't bother me. I don't care what any of you do in this lunatic world, but I'm desperately working to return to my original one, so stay out of my way. Yeah, I was just gonna mention that, yeah, that is absolutely true. I don't remember what class I took in college that basically, like, said that, yeah, that's exactly how it is. Your personality and really your actions that you perform in your life are based around those that you grew up around with. And yeah, so if you grow up in a very bad neighborhood, for example, with people that do shitty things, or you go to school and you're always hanging around really shitty people, then what do you think that's going to do to you? So you're not born a bad or good person. It's the experiences and people that you grow up around with that kind of, you know, morph you and all that. Because when we're young, we're very impressionable. Very, very impressionable. The old document made its way back to Sotoko again. This time, Sotoko started teasing me, waving it around and saying to come get it. She held her nose and made a sour face like she was holding up something filthy, earning laughs and jeers from the rest of the class. I went straight for Sotoko, and of course, she threw it to the next one in line. She must have thought it would make me go over there next. But I didn't care about where the document was. Instead, I charged straight at Sotoko. I tucked my nails into the bases of my fingers and clenched my fist. I decided this was the fastest method to explain how important this was, make her understand and prevent any reprisals, all in a very short period of time. I swung my right fist at Sotoko's face. The tip of my fist plowed into her face, below her left eye, leaving an imprint that wouldn't soon disappear. I promptly grabbed a clump of her hair and pushed her to the floor, and then took a nearby chair, yes, this is the scene, and raised it over my head before smashing it into her a few times. Sotoko didn't know what had just happened. Confused by the sudden violence, she just curled up like a turtle. It looked a little crazy, hitting her with a chair like this, but it wouldn't hurt her very badly. I raised the chair and then slammed it down over top of Sotoko's upper body, exactly as if to hold her to the ground. I lifted my foot above the chair and stomped on it like I was hammering in a nail.
Satoko, anta skoshi urusai.
A little?
私の親友と同じ顔してるから、ちょっと多めに見てきたけど。いい加減、あんたのその甲高い声にもイラついてきたわ。以後、私の半径1メートル以内に入ったら、言い訳なしで即ぶん殴るから、そのつもりでよろしく。聞いてる?
I stomped on the chair again and finally saw an expression of fear arrive on Sotoko's face. I knew this was the best answer. When given the chance, I had to give it to her straight, but it made me mad. I was the last one in the world who wanted to see Sotoko looking like that. I was the one who was forcing her to make that expression, and it made me sick. But this isn't the Sotoko we know, so we just gotta get through it. But it was fine in the end. This Sotoko wasn't the one I knew after all, and one day I would leave this world for sure. Even if I killed her on the spot, it wouldn't have anything to do with the Sotoko of my world. That's why I didn't hurt inside at all seeing her look at me so terrified.
ほら、リカちゃんの本を返してあげて。はい、リカちゃん。
Rena plucked the document from a bewildered classmate and returned it to me.
だからもう、さとこちゃんを許してあげて。
No.
少しやりすぎだよ。
No.
なら、私の大切な本を奪って、貴重な読書の時間の邪魔をするのは、大してやりすぎではない。そういう意味じゃなくて、当事者じゃないなら引っ込んでて。私はこれを取り戻せて満足よ。
I kicked the chair over, indicating to Sotoko that she had been released. But even that action made her so scared that she was frozen in place. I didn't waste time going back to my own seat. Then Sotoko began to bawl shamelessly, and Satoshi ran over, making a big, overprotective fuss about the nurse's office and whatnot. The noise quickly reached the faculty room, and Chie and the principal soon burst in.
大丈夫ですか、さとこさん。これはあざになるかもしれませんね。
Yeah, just a bruise.
サトシ君、保健室へ連れて行って休ませてください。私は山本先生を呼んできます。
While Chie was talking, the principal must have asked Mion what had happened in the classroom. Mion spoke to him in hushed tones, glancing my way. She was probably saying that she had no part in this. Nasty Mion might say that. She didn't betray my expectation. The principal came over to me and told me to come with him to the principal's office. This usually happens when a bullied child happens to bully back. A side effect of the bullying, perhaps. I was seriously fed up with everything, but my goal had only been to scare Sotoko off from bothering me ever again. Now that I had done that, I decided I needed to calm the situation down. After being brought to the principal's office, he kept asking me why I had punched Sotoko and lectured me that violence was never the answer. But regarding her taking my book and tormenting me, he admitted that she was at fault, and I felt a little relieved.
これはなかなか難しい本であるな。フルデ君の家の書物かね。
まあ、そんなところなのです。
わしも古文は嫌いではないが、これはなかなかに難読だ。君には読めるのかね。
読めなきゃ読みませんです。
それは道理である。どういう内容のことが書いてあるのか。
It's none of your fucking business. What the fuck? His behavior wasn't one out of interest in the book, so much as an act dripping with pity, like he wanted to ease the mind of someone alienated and bullied in class a little. Accepting that would do nothing but further amplify my current unhappiness.
別に友達なんか欲しくないし、校長先生に友達になっても欲しくありません。もういいのですか？私はその続きを一刻も早く読み進めたいのです。
フルデ君、読書もいいが、たまには友達に混じって遊ぶのもいいこととは思わんかね。
私の友達は別の遠い場所にいます。ここにはいないので興味ないです。
その手痛まないかね。
ああ。
I didn't realize it until the principal pointed it out. I must have scraped the skin off my hand when I punched Sotoko as hard as I could. A little bit of blood was seeping from my right fist.
保健室に山本先生が来てるから、行って手当てをしてもらいなさい。
そうします。
フルデ君、学校は勉強をするだけのところじゃない。友達を作るところでもあるぞ。少しそこを肝に。
失礼しますです。ペコリ。
Why did she actually say bow? Whatever. This world's principal wasn't the principal who was allowed to lecture me, so I didn't have any desire to listen. That is fair. On my way to the nurse's office, I passed the classroom. I met eyes with several students inside, but they immediately looked away. Maybe this will work out. I'm more comfortable with them being scared than teasing me. When I went into the nurse's office, the doctor was just putting a big piece of absorbent cotton under Sotoko's eye. Chie, who was with her, looked at me and then walked over with a scary look on her face.
さあ二人とも、さとこさんはご本を取ってごめんなさいと、フルデさんは殴ってごめんなさいと、互いに謝りなさい。
Sadako, who had been scared and weak in the face of the sudden violence earlier, must have calmed down since she now looked dejected. She looked like it didn't make sense to her, how she was only teasing me a little and then I suddenly went crazy for no reason and hit her. If she was like that, well, there was no way she would apologize first. Of course, I had no duty to apologize either, so I wouldn't apologize first.
ほら二人とも、お互い謝らないならいつまでもこのままですよ。
Oh, we might be here a long while then. Chie yelled at us. Clearly making a sour face, I held my bleeding fist out to Yamamoto.
出血してるじゃないかね。座りなさい。消毒しよう。
二人とも、先生の言うことが聞けませんか？謝りなさい。
I sensed that if we kept making Chie mad, she might tell us to stay after school. What did she think this was? Like how I'd let some school I don't care about do their little lecturing nonsense at me. Every second of every minute is precious. I can't waste a single one. Once I understood that, I was the first to act. As Yamamoto disinfected the wound, I smoothly gave her my apology.
北条さん、殴ったりしてごめんなさい。
Even I was appalled at how insincere my apology was. Chie probably felt the same way, but she at least appreciated the words.
ほら、フルデさんは謝りましたよ。さとこさんも謝りなさい。ご本を取っていたずらしてすみませんでした。
Sotoko's own apology was no less disingenuous than mine. I glared straight into Sotoko's eyes, warning her never to bother me again. But Sotoko was in her rebellious phase. It would take a lot more than that to make her wince. She returned my glare in kind, as if to say that she'd get me back next time. Chie sighed, unable to do much about our insincere apologies. And then the bell signaling the end of lunch break rang.
ではさとこさん、教室に戻りましょう。フルデさんも手当てが終わったらすぐに戻ってくるように。
Chie followed Sotoko and left the nurse's office. I didn't give them so much as a glance and just held my right hand out to Yamamoto. The stinging pain of the disinfectant was somehow weak. The hand receiving treatment didn't even feel like my own hand. I suppose it wouldn't. It's Rika Furude's hand, not mine.
みんな今年で学校がおしまいになってしまうのが寂しいんだな。君もだろう？
別に、そう。
住み慣れた故郷が湖底に沈むんだ。悲しくないわけがないよ。君たちの気持ちもよくわかるさ。
That must have been Yamamoto's interpretation of the strained atmosphere in the classroom. If he was convinced of that, then maybe it was fine. It didn't matter to me.
君だってちょっと前までは友達がいっぱいいた。でもたまたま君と特に仲がいい友達がみんな揃って転校しちゃったんだよな。君が突然一人ぼっちになってしまった寂しい気持ちはわしもよくわかる。
仲の良かった友達ですか？
ほら、富田くんや岡村くんたちさ。いっつも仲良しの男子たちと一緒にいたじゃないか。君はこう一点で随分可愛がられていたと思うけど。
Why is he really knowledgeable on Rika's friend clique here? I see. Even Rika Furude had friends for a while in this world. And thanks to a stroke of bad luck, they all transferred out together and left her behind.
でも友達は彼らだけじゃないんじゃないかね。寂しい気持ちもわかるし、来年までの仲かもしれないけど、クラスの他の子とも友達になって楽しくやっていった方が君にとってもいいんじゃないかい？
別に親しくなりたくなんかないし、私の本当の友達はあなたの言う通り遠くへ行ってしまったわ。とてもとても遠くへね。私はそこへ帰りたいだけ。
リカちゃんはいつからそんな大人びた話し方をするようになったのかね？
まあ気分です。
先日君がボールを頭にぶつけて気絶した一件以来、君がこれまで見せなかった暗い表情を見せているような気がしてね、心配してるんだよ。
I didn't know how close this Yamamoto man was to Rika Furude, nor how much of her he knew. But judging from his words, well, he seemed to be the kind of adult who understood children's feelings, just like Irie in the previous world.
あのボールが当たった時、多分フルデリカは死んだと思うんです。
あれくらいで死んでたらドッジボールもできないよ。じゃああれで死んでたんなら君は亡者ということなのかね。
Yamamoto laughed a little, but not completely to tease me. It was just to urge me further along. So Yamamoto wasn't just the doctor at the nurse's office, but a mental counselor for students at a susceptible age. It looked like he wasn't Irie's replacement for nothing. For some reason, I felt like opening up a little to him. Maybe it was because he didn't exist in the world I knew. Right now, everyone who was in the world I knew, no matter who it was, made me uncomfortable. That was why I felt like opening up specifically to someone who wasn't in that world. After all, Yamamoto probably thought I was just a girl hitting puberty. Whatever nonsense I spouted, he would nod and agree.
私、山本たちの知ってるフルデリカじゃないんです。
I don't know about this.
それはどういうことだね。じゃあ君は誰なのかな。
とりあえず、ベルンカステルって名乗ることにしました。フルデリカって名乗ったら、この体の本来の持ち主に悪いので。
Interesting move.
ベルン横文字かい。まるで宇宙人みたいだね。君はどこから来たんだい。
別の世界からです。例えるなら、イフの世界。同じひなみざわだけど、歴史や成り立ちが全く違う世界。この世界では、ダム計画が決定して、村人の立ち退きが決まっているけれど、ダム計画に村人が結束して立ち上がり、計画を打倒する。そして、ダム計画は無期限に凍結された。そういう世界から来ました。
So we're kind of just letting it all out, but yeah, when you think about it, it can just be the, ramblings of a child. A child's imagination at work here. Nobody's gonna take that seriously.
では君の来たひなみざわはダム湖には沈まないわけか。
そうです。昭和58年の後もずっとのどかな生活が続いていきます。
いいひなみざわだね。わしもこの土地をとても気に入ってるから立ち退きは本当は心苦しい。
Yeah, I'm a sucker to I guess to like the countryside, a little bit of a lonely, secluded area. It's not exactly where I grew up, but it's quieter, it's peaceful, it's more, I wouldn't say secluded, but everybody is more together, like one as a team. I don't know. I mean, seeing everybody gang up like they did finally in Chapter 7 was a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm all for it. Community, I guess, is like the correct term.
だから君の来たという世界のひなみざわに憧れるよ。その世界のひなみざわをもう少しわしに教えてくれんかね。
I'm a little suspicious of this doctor for some reason. The first step in counseling was to agree to whatever absurd story the patient came out with. If I didn't know that piece of trivia, I might have teared up at Yamamoto telling me to continue. But I couldn't resist the temptation to keep going. He encouraged me and I kept talking. In that world, there was a big protest movement that we called the Dam Conflict, and it took years for them to withdraw the proposal. And through that conflict, the villagers came together. Everyone got along. All the students were friends, and we even had transfer students come in from outside of the village. And we made a club where we would play games with Mion as the president. And while Sotoko was very unfortunate, she was good friends with me. And then...
さとこちゃんがかわいそうだな。なんでさとこちゃんが村中からいじめられなくちゃいけないんだい。みんな幸せな世界なんだから。さとこちゃんにも意地悪しないで幸せの輪に入れてあげなよ。
別に意地悪で言ってるわけじゃないわ。私の世界ではそうというだけの話よ。それにこの世界の里子よりは辛い運命をたどるかもしれないけど、その里子は 私の一番の友達で、他に比べるものなどない。だからこの世界の聡子の顔が余計に腹が立つの。
その君の本当の親友と同じ顔で君に意地悪をするのが許せない？
Yeah, exactly that.
そう。
Yamamoto heaved a heavy sigh and then stared out the window with his arms folded. It looked like the rain outside had let up somewhat, but it was still drizzling. After keeping his silence for a few moments, Yamamoto spoke up.
つまりここは君の世界じゃないということかい？
Yes.
そうです。私は元の世界に帰らなければならない。ここは私の世界じゃないんですから。
確かにそんな楽しいひなみざわなら一刻も早く元の世界に帰りたいよな。でも帰る方法はあるのかね？
あります。でも探すのはとても大変です。
ほう、そりゃどんな方法だい？
多分このひなみざわのどこかにかけらが落ちています。そのかけらのせいで私を元の世界に戻す力を持ったいえ、お社様がこの世界へ来られないのです。
お社様って古出神社に祀られてるあの神様のお社様？
説明すると長いですが、そんなところです。私は彼女と一緒にあまたの世界を巡ってきました。この世界はその結果に漂着した世界の一つでしかありません。だから彼女が来てくれればすぐにでも出ていくつもり。
急に話が大きくなったね。つまり君はお社様と一緒にこの世界へ来たわけだ。
No, no.
ところが君をこの世界から連れ出せるお社様がどういうわけかこの世界に入れない。
Yes, yes.
つまり君は船が漂流してしまって取り残されたようなものということかね？
平たく言うとそういうことです。彼女をこちらに呼びたくても彼女を阻害するかけらがこのひなみざわのどこかにある。それを見つけ出して焼いてしまわないと私は元の世界へ帰れない。
そのかけらというのはどこにあるんだい？
Fuck if I know, but honestly, really, there's a lot of differences here. And a lot of it really is things kind of just existing, like people being alive when they probably shouldn't be, and things being a little out of the ordinary, such as people acting a little different than what we're used to, events changing, you know, obviously the entire village is going to be flooded here very shortly, and our friends are not our friends. There's a lot of differences, but it includes a lot of what we know, a lot of the people and events that we are used to. But honestly, the big thing here that I've noticed is that this doctor here is the only difference, but I can't flat out suspect him. I mean, things worked out differently with Takano. More so, the actual Takano, not the bad Takano. So I guess that just led to Irie not being here, and well, this place needed a clinic, and well, here we go. It does make me wonder about the syndrome, though. I guess that is taken care of, maybe, because of the doctor? I don't know.
どこかにあるの。かけらは重い。
Regardless, I am a little suspicious of this guy here, Yamamoto, but at the same time, I know I shouldn't be because, well, there's a reason for this being completely different, for this one area here being something that has greatly changed.
だからそれが宿る何か、どんな形をしているものに宿っているのかわからないし、宿っているのがものという保証もない人間に宿っているのかもしれない。何もわからないんです。
君は物だったら焼くと言ったね。人だったらどうするんだい？
羽生は人の場合なら殺すことで同じ意味を持つと言ってる。かけらを宿すのが人間でないことを祈ってるわ。
その羽生というのは誰だい？新しい登場人物だね。
ああ、お社様の別名よ。むしろ羽生が本名。 お社様なんて名前は後世の村人の誰かがつけた適当な名前じゃない？
なるほど。それが君の読んでいた本に書いてあったのかな？
別にそういうわけじゃないわ。
Yamamoto's arms remained folded, and he groaned in thought. Another silence settled, with rain being the only audible sound. Maybe I'd gotten nervous. I knew it wouldn't solve anything to talk about it, but I did anyway. Well, it kind of helps to talk about the situation. Letting it out clears the mind. If somebody's willing to listen, it can help. Even if they don't, like, fully, trust what you're saying or believe what you're saying and go along with it, they may completely reject it. But at the same time, somebody is hearing it, and that alone can be very helpful. Yamamoto was probably wondering if something was wrong with my brain. I could guess that by looking at his complicated expression. Yeah, honestly.
見つかりそうかい？
わからないわ。
I'm sure he's like probably really fucking concerned about us now,
他
but
人
whatever.
に干渉する力なのだから、お社様にゆかりのある何かにヒントがあるんじゃないかと思って古文書を読んでいるところ、探し物のヒントを探してる。
そうか、見つかるといいね。でもそれが人だったら君はどうするんだい？まさか本当に殺しちゃう気なのかね？
He's really circling back to that.
そういう風に聞かれると返答に困るけど、それしか元の世界に戻る方法がないなら、
Yeah, and the
私は
fact that
躊
we're
躇しないか
admitting
もしれない。
we're admitting that we would do this shit.
どうせ私の世界から見れば、この世界は妄想や白チュームと同じ。
And if we go along with that shit from his perspective or his point of view, it's gonna be like, well, everything she just spouted is nonsense and she's crazy.
誰が死んだって
Time to restrain her.
私の世界では生きてるし、
なるほどなるほど。でもちょっと待ちなさい。君にとってこの世界は夢の中なのかもしれないが、たとえ誰であっても殺されちゃ困る。
That's what I'm saying. Everything moves on. I think I said it in the previous episode, but or maybe this one. I don't remember, but yeah, everything's gonna move on. Just like in previous worlds where, from other perspectives such as Keiichi's and Shion's, once Rika is dead, everything does move on. It is a real world that she just is no longer a part of.
理屈は分かってるし、私も人殺しなんてせずに帰れるなら、それに越したことはないわ。
話題を戻そう。君に元の世界への帰り方を教えてくれるその羽生はどうやって君にそれを伝えるんだい？お告げみたいなものがあるのかい？それとも夢枕に立つ？
そんな曖昧なものじゃない。会話するのよ。ある水晶玉が羽生と私の通信機の役目を果たすの。
わしもその羽生と話すことはできるかね？
Nope. That would be the fastest way. If he could talk to Hanyu directly, that would be enough to prove my nonsense true. But I felt uneasy. Even if I could talk to her, Yamamoto might not be able to. Those kinds of magic items come up pretty often in stories, but maybe it was worth a shot trying. I took the crystal ball out of my pocket.
そのビー玉が通信機かい？
やっぱりそう思うわよね。私もビー玉だと思ったわ。
The crystal ball's light was extremely weak. As it got dimmer, it was also taking longer to restore lately. After talking to her several days ago and the light weakened again, it was having a hard time recovering. This much light wasn't quite enough. It looked like it needed a little bit more time to recover.
このビー玉に光が宿ってるのがわかる？
どうだろう。光の反射じゃないかい？でも綺麗なビー玉だね。ラムネ瓶の玉かい？
とんでもない。フルデ神社の至宝、カムのなんたらとかいうありがたい宝だそうよ。ラムネ瓶の玉に見えるって点では悪いけど、私も同感ね。
フルデ神社の。これでどうやって羽生と会話を？
私は額に当てるようにするわ。すると声が聞こえるの。
Yamamoto immediately tried. He shut his eyes and let out a low groan. It probably wouldn't work. I couldn't tell if it was because it wasn't me or because the power was too weak.
申し訳ないが、わしには聞こえんな。 君はどうだね？
羽生と話すにはある程度の力が回復してないといけない。貸して。私でもダメね。まだ回復しきっていない水晶玉では羽生の声を聞くことができないわ。
I pushed it tightly against my forehead, but all I felt was a cool sensation. I couldn't feel the power in it.
そうか。それは残念だな。
日数を重ねると多少は力が回復するようなの。時間をもらえればきっとまた会話ができるようになるわ。その時もう一度試してもらえれば。
そうかい。じゃあもし会話ができるようになったらぜひわしにも会話をさせてくれないかね？
ええ、もちろんよ。このままじゃただの寝言か世まい事と思われて終わりだもの。その失礼な誤解を解かなくちゃ後味が悪いわ。
その水晶玉の神通力はどのくらいの時間を待てば回復するんだい？
もう少しだと思う。もう一晩も待てばひょっとすると大丈夫かもしれない。力が戻ったらあなたに教えるわ。
ありがとう。待ってるよ。もし羽生と話をさせてくれたらわしも君が元の世界へ帰れるように協力しようじゃないか。どうだね？
本当に？
The simple word help made a deep impression on my mind. I think we're kind of falling for something that's just not realistic here. If someone other than Hanyu were able to understand me, it would obviously be a reassurance. And with two people, the time it would take to go through the piles of literature would be halved. I would welcome the help of a cat at this point, so I was really glad. On the other hand, I had to think about what Yamamoto felt. For Yamamoto right now, I was a dangerous person who said that she might even commit murder over a delusion. He was only speaking to me in such an understanding way to try and help communication going, or to keep communication going. It didn't mean he actually believed me. But if Hanyu and Yamamoto could talk, it would clear all those fears away, and then he'd have to help believe in the supernatural phenomena of Hanyu and me. But the real world didn't usually work out that well. After all, even if I made Hanyu talk to him, it could end in the way it always does, with Yamamoto not hearing anything. I could convey that she was saying, or what she was saying, but he wouldn't believe it. But that didn't mean I had the option of not trying. I wouldn't give up before doing it. I would try everything. Wasn't that the lesson I had learned from this 100-year journey?
約束よ。ちゃんと羽生と話ができたら信じて。会う会うしか言わない。およそ神様っぽくないやつだけどね。
約束するよ。羽生と話をさせてくれたら君の話を信じよう。でももし羽生と話ができなかったらどうする？
I didn't actually think he'd reply like that, and it confused me.
どうするって言われても。
君が勝ったら君の話を信じる約束になってる。じゃあわしが勝ったら君がわしの話を信じるという約束にしないかな？
No, we don't want to do that. That's just going to further put us in a state of worry, concern, and possible insanity. You know, this constant, wondering, are we actually from another world and all that.
どうだね？
山本の何の話を信じろと？
Well, I could imagine it without having to ask. He'd probably tell me to go to a largish hospital and have my head given a proper look at. Of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with my head, so it would come up with 0 results. When that happened, maybe they'd say I needed to take care of my mind and give me psychotropic drugs or something. I had heard this from Rena once before. There's a drug that makes you incredibly lethargic, unable to do or even think anything at all. Dangerous patients think terrible things and sometimes actually do them. The drugs stop that from happening. If they made me take that, it would be the same as killing me. It might seem like a fair condition, but it looked to me like the scales were not in my favor to begin with. I shouldn't have told this stuff to a man I barely knew. After all that, I began to regret my decision. Could I fool him if I said it was all a joke? Did you believe me, Nippa? Well, if that was going to be my last resort, well, I could use it in my attempt to have Yamamoto and Hanyu communicate failed, or if it had failed. I couldn't abandon the possibility that Yamamoto could be my ally without trying first.
じゃあ 明日はちゃんとリカちゃんのために予定を空けておこう。それでいいかい？
He made his suggestion, taking a notebook out of his coat and going over his other appointments. I nodded and said I agreed. We better hope this fucking ball powers up, because goddamn if it doesn't, we are in a very peculiar position since Rika really wanted to talk to somebody about this. Which again, I think is a healthy option, but this is also a very, very peculiar situation overall.
ちょっといいかい？
After school, as I was about to head home before the rain started up again, Satoshi called out to me. I looked up and saw Mion and Reina with him. I'd been stopped by the upperclassmen brigade. Excuse me, I can't even speak. Their expressions weren't exactly gentle ones, and I suspected I was in for sort of a punishment after what I did during lunch break.
何かご用なのですか？
少しお話ししたいなって思って。
お昼休みのことなのですか？
それもあるし、
里子をお椅子で叩いたりとかしてごめんなさいなのです。
I spoke the words fine, but didn't bother to hide my glum attitude.
怖がらないでよ、リカちゃん。別に私たちはリカちゃんを叱ろうとかそういうつもりで呼び止めたんじゃないんだよ。ならどうして呼び止めたのですか？
まあ単刀直入に言うとさ、みんなで仲良くなるためにどうしたらいいだろうねって相談だよ。たださ、一応理解してほしいんだよね。今の現状を招いたのはリカちゃんにも多少の責任があるってこと。
ミオン、そんなことを今わざわざ言わなくても。
This kind of goes back to, how Rika was in this world, because it's a very interesting situation. Did something go down between when Rika lost her friends to when, I guess, our Rika popped up here? I really wonder what went down, because all we did here was get bullied and then fight back. And it seems like we're the problem.
こういうのを教えてあげるのも上級生の役割だと思うけどな。違う？
もう。
This conversation didn't look like it would be a fun one. If I blew them off, it would probably only get worse, so I decided to just pretend I was listening. Reina took my silence for me being dispirited, and she started speaking in a much more lighthearted tone.
リカちゃんだってみんなとお友達で楽しく遊べたら素敵だって思うでしょ？それでね、みんなでね、仲良く遊べるようにはどうすればいいのか私たち考えたの。なんだと思うかな？わかりませんです。
リカちゃんは知らないと思うけど、ミオンってね、いろんなゲームを持ってるんだよ。ね。
まあ昔の趣味だけどね。小さい頃にどういうわけかボードゲームとかカードゲームをすごく集めてた時期があってね。最近は全然興味ないんだけど、まあ捨てるわけじゃなし、大量に在庫があったりするわけよ。
I wasn't gonna lie. I was expecting some like early chapters shit to pop up here with like the scary eyes and everything, and just like, I don't know, spook us a little bit. But no, I guess everything is nice and cheerful here. They probably just want to help out. They don't want there to be all this chaos and mixed feelings about in this very small class.
楽しそうなゲームがいっぱいあるのに全然遊んでなくて埃をかぶってるなんてもったいないよね。私、あの泥棒役がサングラスかけて遊ぶイギリスの泥棒ゲームやってみたいな。
僕は木の枝をどんどんつなげていくあの積み木みたいなゲームをやってみたいよ。
どのマニュアルも英語なんだけどな。シオンの野郎がそういうののマニュアルを読むのだけは得意だったっけ。シオンに聞けば早いけど学園行っちゃったからな。
ならみんなで読んで理解しようよ。それもきっと楽しいよ。
そうだね。みんなで同じルールでゲームするなら、たとえ間違ってても公平だしね。
ね、楽しそうでしょ？放課後にみんなで集まってゲームで遊ぶゲーム部って部活を始めようって思ってるの。ゲーム部、部活。
クラスの誰もが参加できるんだよ。そこでみんなで遊んでいるうちに きっとリカちゃんもいつの間にかみんなの輪に溶け込んでると思うんだ。
クラスで一人だけ浮いちゃってるあんたを溶け込ませてあげようっていう上級生の心遣いってわけよ。
だからミオン、そういうことは言わなくても。
I mean, we already
最近
know
は
it.
少し気の毒な感じもしてきたけど、実際のとこ私は今のリカちゃんの孤立は多少自業自得なところもあったんじゃないかって思ってる。
Again, not really sure how that happened. Unless because of this past week, you know, she just, I guess, further secluded herself? I don't know. My own fault. Reina and Satoshi fell silent after hearing that. I guess everyone in class shares Mion's opinion.
自業自得なのですか。
Of course, though this was about me, I had no idea what they meant by that. They were talking about the Rika Furude before I came. To me, she was the same as a stranger. But to them, it must have seemed like my surprised tone was just me not understanding because I was young. They sighed a little. It was an unpleasant sigh, like they were telling me to look at myself. I wanted to be freed from this as soon as possible.
まだみんなが引っ越してっちゃう前さ、リカちゃんってさ、お姫様だったよね。
お姫様ですか。
そう、お姫様。リカちゃんは男の子たちのグループの中で何でもチヤホヤしてもらえるお姫様だったよね。
Ah,
自分からは何もせず、常に彼らに何かをさせる。富田くんや岡村くん覚えてる？あの二人なんかは特にあんたが好きだったみたいだから、あんたが言うことは何でもしたよね。
shit, she gets away with that actually in the other worlds too. I guess in this one it was just a lot more apparent.
あんたはその上にあぐらをかいて涼しそうにしてるだけだった。そしてあんたに好意のある男の子たちを競わせるようなことをして、いっつも漁夫の利のような感じでちゃっかりとこうしてる。
God damn.
そんなのを不愉快に思ってる子も少なくなかったんだよ。だからそういう男の子たちが偶然にもみんな引っ越しちゃって、あんただけが取り残された時、ざまあ見ろって言ってる子もいたんだよ。
Including Sotoko, huh? None of that was about me.
リカちゃん、君にしてる話だよ。みーちゃんの話、聞いてあげて。聞いてますですよ。聞いてないよ。リカちゃんは自分とは関係ない話だと思ってる。そうでしょ？
Whether Rena or Reina, well, she was still just as sharp about the weirdest things. I wanted to believe it was just a wild guess, but she had hit the nail right on the head.
レイナもよしなよ。リカちゃんはもうそれを十分反省したと思うよ。
どうかな。反省したとはまだ聞いてないし、その様子からだと私たちに言われるまで気づきもしなかったって風だよ。
だからよしなって。僕たちはリカちゃんをいじめたいわけじゃないんだ。本当の意味でリカちゃんと友達になりたいって思ってるんだよ。それには僕たちもリカちゃんもこれまでの関係を変えていく努力をしていかなくちゃならない。
For some reason, I was upset, because it was though they weren't talking about Rika Furude, but about me. Me, a princess. There was no guarantee I wasn't one until now. Loved the most of all the club members, Rena and the boys in the class pampering me, laughing at Sotoko and Keiichi's failures as I coolly profited from their conflict. Without giving anything myself, I just greedily devoured the goodwill people poured upon me. They were right, that was me. I hadn't wanted to accept this sad, lonely world and set myself apart, but of course, they couldn't have actually been talking about me. So though I didn't know the reason, I was still upset.
部活にはね、サトコも加えようと思うんだ。サトコだって意地っ張りだから直接はなかなか言えないけど、リカちゃんと仲直りしたいって思ってるんだよ。
Oh, I wonder.
どう？ゲーム部の部活にリカちゃんも参加してみない？きっと楽しいと思うよ。
こんなあたりからでもさ、自分を変えようと小さな努力を始めてみない？ってこと。
最初はギクシャクすることもあるかもしれない。でもね、きっとそのうち仲良しになれると思うの。だってみんなもリカちゃんとお友達になりたいと思ってるし、リカちゃんも
みんなとお友達になりたいと思ってるなら、そう届かないわけない。
もう僕たちは伸ばしてるんだよ。あとはリカちゃんが掴むだけ。
Honestly, I thought this was going to be like a fucking like threat or something from like all three of them ganging up on her, but no. No, this is good. I felt like Keiichi said something a lot like that in some other world. Those words probably made Rika Furude really happy, but that wasn't me. All this only applied to the Rika Furude from before I possessed this body. For me, this world was fake, a dream world, and besides, I was in the middle of a hunt. I didn't have time to hang out with them. But they weren't faking their feelings for Rika Furude, and I found myself without an answer, at a loss for how to respond to them.
リカちゃん、ごめんね。実はさっき、お手洗いに行くとき、保健室で山本先生としてる話、ちょっとだけ聞いちゃったの。
Reina gave me an apologetic look. I never thought others would be listening to that conversation, which must have sounded like garbled nonsense to anyone from this world. I would understand if it weirded them out and they didn't want to come near me, but I couldn't quite understand why it had resulted in this.
リカちゃんが言ってた世界って、みんなが仲良しのとっても楽しい世界なんだよね。リカちゃんはそこへ帰りたいって言ってたよね。だからね、私たち話し合って、リカちゃんがその世界に戻れる方法を考えたの。
と言っても、もちろん引っ越しちゃった富田くんや岡村くんたちを呼び戻すわけじゃないけどね。
うん。元の世界へ戻ることって誰もが望むことだと思うけど。
That startled me. There was no way Reina knew about me in my old world. I think what she is referring to is how things used to be. Even still, her words felt full of meaning, and they echoed in my heart.
壊れたコップのかけらをどう未練がましく拾おうとしてもね、一度砕けちゃったものはもう戻らないの。でもね、コップは一つじゃない。壊れたコップは惜しいだろうけど、また探せばいいんだよ。でも、砕けたコップのかけらを見つめてうなだれているうちは、絶対に見つけられない。
つまりね、リカちゃん。引っ越してしまったリカちゃんの親しかった友達は、もう呼び戻せないけど、なら、それに負けないくらいの友達を、また作ればいいんだよ。
Like they're kind of missing the mark, but you know their intentions are good.
きっと、そうして作った世界は、リカちゃんの元の世界に限りなく近い世界になると思うの。もちろん、全く同じにはならない。でもね、それが一番、元の世界に近づける方法だと思うな。
そうすることでさ、前よりも素敵な関係を築けるってことはあるよね。雨降って地面がなんとやらって言うでしょ。
どう？リカちゃん、僕たちもリカちゃんがみんなに早く馴染めるよう応援する。だから僕たちと一緒に頑張ってみないかな。
Those gentle words would have been tear-worthy if they had been said to this world's Rika Furude. But now that I had possessed her, she was gone. The Rika Furude that they were talking to was no longer of this world. I thought to myself that I should just give this body back to her. If I did, the me living in this remote parallel universe would have the chance to change her fate and make this world a happy one, if only little by little. If I went back to my old world and gave this leftover body back to Rika Furude, but I couldn't do that, because for me to leave this world would require the same method as returning the fragment from this world to the world of the gods. In other words, my death. Only my death could make me go away, which meant at the point I took over for Rika Furude, she was the same as dead. But maybe, just maybe, there was one way to return this body to Rika Furude. That would be for me to die in a different way. I wasn't a parasite or anything. In difficult to understand terms, I was an individual personality aware of other universes. Or maybe I should call myself a memory aware of other universes. And that meant that if I could forget about the other worlds, that would represent the same thing as me dying. This world was the only world for Rika Furude, and she would live the best she could in it. If so, I would gradually forget, eventually losing my grasp on which world I had lived in, and try my hardest to live in the world I was in now, which meant that giving up on my previous world and living in this one was possible simply if I decided to do it. Like Reina said, it might be a different world than my old one, but it was the closest I could ever get. It might be a little different from my old world, but the club would still form. In exchange for Keiichi and half our classmates, Satoshi was here. I wasn't best friends with Sodako, but depending on how we interacted in the future, we could at least become regular friends. Hinamizawa would sink underwater in another 6 months, but I could work hard to make new friends in my new home. That cruel destiny wasn't Rika Furude's alone. It was an impartial destiny shared equally by all who lived in this world. Only I had the luxury of being a special case and jumping between destinies at a whim. I didn't know. Which world should I devote myself to? Reina's words came back to me. A broken cup never went back to normal, and I couldn't find another one as long as I was lamenting the first. What did the cup represent? Cups were for filling with water. The water could probably be called happiness. The cup broke and the happiness inside was scattered everywhere. The cup was broken and I was at a loss, unable to fill it with happiness again. But if I could change the way I thought, and rather than be attached to the broken cup forever, fill a new cup with new happiness, it could open the door to a new world. Still, while that world might be similar, it wouldn't be the same. My heart had weakened, and I had been discouraged. Wasn't this only so tempting because my search for the key to go back was so difficult? Before, didn't I swear I would put in any effort I needed to return to my old world? If I broke that oath, Hanyu, gambling on my fate, would be left behind for all eternity, all alone, and I would be the only one so selfishly happy. Maybe, there's no guarantee in that. While I didn't have any responsibility to make Hanyu happy, she was my ally and partner who stuck with me for 100 years, and my friend. So even if I wanted to give in to temptation, I would have to ask Hanyu, which meant right now I had no right to answer their proposal.
本当にありがとうです。とても嬉しく思いますのです。
大丈夫。僕たちがきっと守ってあげるから。だから、この学校が廃校になっちゃうまでの時間、いっぱい楽しい思い出作りをしようよ。
いえ、少しだけ心の整理をしたいのです。
はあ？何を乙女チックなことを。別にサトシがあんたに告ったわけでもないでしょうが。
みーちゃん、余計なことは言わないの。私はリカちゃんの気持ち、ちょっぴりだけわかるよ。だから、リカちゃんが心の整理をつけるの、待ってるからね。
ありがとうです。もし、お願いするときは、どうか、このフルでリカを、みんなの仲間に加えてやってくださいです。
I bowed apologetically. Here and now, that was the most I could do. I think that's a good enough done. Maybe. I mean, the world will live on, like I said. How it goes, however Rika goes, whether Rika's life ends, you know, the world still continues, whatever. But thinking about how things will go is a healthy thing, you know? Even if we supposedly do not care about this world. Alright, we will end the episode here. I am tired, and, you know, definitely ready to call this this episode a complete one. But very interesting ideas brought up, and even so things are different, with all the characters seemingly different than how we're used to seeing them. In the end, especially from the scene we just got, they're still the characters that we know, at least out of Rena and Mion. They're still Rena and Mion from all the other chapters. I just think that, well, maybe they're right. Rika is always the special one, you know? In all the other worlds, she's alone. She's a foster child who's lost her parents and everything, but is also worshipped because of a Yashiro-sama. In a way, yeah, you could say that she's always been seen as a princess, but not explicitly so. So this kind of did come as a surprise for, well, both her and, well, me. So I can kind of see how that can connect to the overall idea of who Rika actually is altogether. It fits her character in general. Just like how, even so the characters are a bit different here, they're still themselves. Just a little different. But they're still themselves. I don't know how else to fucking say it. But anyways, thank you all for watching this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz. And the next episode, I guess we'll maybe make a decision on what we do from here and maybe continue our search, try and find a way out of here. I don't know. Guess we'll see what happens. Take it easy.